He gets to go first because he's a loser.
You're so looking forward to this for some reason. I don't understand why.
It seems like every episode we're like not wanting to be the first one. We're just getting more and more aggressive every episode. Like, your turn!
Yeah, that's true. I played Vampyr with a Y.
The Masquerade?
No. Vampyr with a Y.
Ah, that one.
Yes, it was released in 2018. It was developed and published by Don't Nod Entertainment, which are the people that made Life is Strange.
I'm nodding.
You are indeed nodding. Don't nod. The plot revolves around a doctor in, was it like 1912 or some shit? Set during the Spanish flu, so between 1918 and 1920. There you go. You're a doctor, but it turns out you're also a vampire.
With a Y?
Yes, with a Y. Because probably copyright or something like that. So the main like story thread of the game is a mystery about like how you became a vampire. You know, you wake up in media res and go, why the fuck did I just kill my relatives? What's going on? This is confusing. You discover more about all of the different vampire lore, a lot of which is actually pretty original to this game. I was pretty impressed by that. And the conflicts that arise between your Hippocratic oath and your desire to suck people off. I mean, suck them off. I mean, diet cock. I mean, their blood. Suck their blood. Not their cock, their blood. But also their cock. But their blood. The blood in the cock. Conflict, you get it? Yes.
This next song is called Pissing Blood Out of My Cock! It's a great meme.
So,
what is wrong with us?
A lot of things. I mean, diet cock. I mean, diet cock.
Move on.
I don't move on. We found that one out. So yeah, the game is like 50% mystery, and then every B plot is about encountering NPCs, finding out their stories. Again, you are a doctor, so you're working in a hospital with a bunch of doctors and nurses, and you're finding out about like, misogyny and shit. Dude, like that's so lame. Me as I drop my feminist books. I'm 6'3", by the way. You're just kind of dealing with people in London, England, in the middle of an epidemic, in addition to there being a vampire epidemic going on that people aren't like recognizing. So the initial like moral conflict of the game is really freaking interesting to me for obvious reasons. It's all based on ethics and philosophy and shit. It's smelling its own farts, and I love it. That shit is good. It is, I would say, a third-person action-adventure game in terms of gameplay. It is animation-based combat and technically stealth, but not really. The vast majority of like the important gameplay is going to be dialogue options, not because there's huge branching narratives, but because pretty much every NPC you can fucking kill, which I respect. Like, as you go down all these weird side plots about, this NPC, Bill fucked Ted's wife or whatever, and you find out all of these things, you talk to different NPCs, you find notes and letters and shit. You can use your vampire skills to like mesmerize them and then lure them into an alley and suck their cock. I mean, their blood. And that's the easiest way to play the game because you get a shit ton of XP from it. But because you're a doctor, you have moral problems with this. So you, as the player, have the agency to theoretically play the entire game without killing like any civilians. You do have to kill bad guys and rats. Lots of rats. You suck a lot of rats off. It's a very common problem. But like that's I'd say the primary mechanic. It's not prevalent like on your moment-to-moment gameplay, but is the background element of, frankly, this game's hard as shit unless you're killing civilians. Like, it sounds pretty simple, and it is, but it does really emphasize the moral conflict that the game has written itself into, which is what makes it interesting. Otherwise, it's just like a action-adventure stealth game. So my current playthrough, I have only killed one civilian. I was trying to do it without killing any, and then I met somebody that made me really fucking angry, and I definitely just acted out my real life politics, let's say. He was a landlord in the slums, so I don't feel bad about it. But like, for example, to get your blood fix, you have to eat rats. You know, you have a health bar, a stamina bar for like dodging and attacking, and then you have a blood bar, which is kind of like your health bar, but they're disconnected. You have to kill rats, and you have to and then suck their blood, and you can do that, but they're not very potent, so you have to kill like a shit ton of them to like have health packs, basically. Like, if you get into a conflict that you are either under leveled for or just you suck, you will then need to go hobble off into an alleyway and find rats for like 5 minutes to just eat because you suck. But you're not willing to just kill somebody to drink a metric fuck ton of their blood and get a crap ton of XP to update or improve your skills. The story is fine. The initial conflict of interest, I think, is what drives most of my interest in it. The actual plot machinations aren't that interesting. They're fine. They're not boring, but they're not particularly unique. You go try to find your creator, you know, the guy who sucked your cock and made you into a vampire. And you go try to find him, and you meet other vampires, and you encounter lots of vampire lore, and all that sort of stuff. And it's fine. I just didn't love it, but I was impressed that a lot of it seemed to be pretty original to the game. I couldn't find a lot of information that they seemingly pulled from, like, folklore-wise. They just kind of wrote their own shit, which I respect. It's weird, but I respect that a lot. Because you're in London in the early 20th century, in the middle of an epidemic, there's a lot of gangs and gang shit. There's a bunch of different factions fighting, and they're all being stupid and whatever. The game does lean slightly more towards centrism than I like, not because the game actually adheres to like that as a policy, but because the game sometimes shies away from things that I'm pretty confident the writers want to say for the sake of like marketing or like digestibility, because the game in the moment to moment like politics of talking to different people in the middle of a like continent-wide epidemic is pretty fucking obvious where the characters are on a spectrum, and then what the writers are intending to be the correct solution to these problems. But it does feel like in a lot of large plot moments, the writers are kind of told to shy away from some things, to put it vaguely, which is annoying. It's a very common problem in games and everything else, to be fair, which I just don't like, which is annoying. But it's not too bad. Character writing is surprisingly fun. There are maybe 30 to 40 NPCs in total that aren't just like enemy combatants. All of them have various different subplots. Some of them are a lot smaller than others, but they all have, you know, you can go to this person's office, find a note in their safe, and then find out that they really hate their mom or whatever. And then that gives you additional dialogue options during your dialogue with them to get information out of them, use your vampire mesmerizing skills to interrogate them or whatever. A lot of these things are mutually exclusive. So say in your hospital, there are two doctors who have very different philosophies about how to do doctoring. And if, depending on how you interact with certain like side quests with them, you know, one guy likes doing experimental research and the other guy's like, no, that guy does experimental research for his ego and whatever. So however you interact with these side quests, you can then lock off certain options from yourself, you know, give this guy the medicine drug or report him to the feds or whatever, you know. So there's a lot of that, which is cool. Most of the characters in and of themselves, I wouldn't say are memorable, but they're not below that either. Like, I could take a couple of days off of playing the game and I don't forget the characters, but I'm also not like, wow, they were so memorable. I'm thinking about them. Most of them are fine. They fit archetypes and they work well enough for what they're doing. They don't have a lot of particularly interesting bits about most of them, to be honest. It just doesn't really click. But they're not just like cardboard stand-ins like a Ubisoft game where they just perform a plot function and that's it. So I don't mind it. Most of the voice acting for the NPCs is pretty solid. Again, if nothing terribly interesting. The voice acting for the lead, Dr. Jonathan Reed, is really fucking good. I didn't recognize the voice actor from anything else that I've played before, but he was pretty damn good. There's a lot of internal dialogue in the game as well. Say every time you eat a rat, there's like 3 dialogue options, and he'll say one of them to himself. He's like, "Oh, this is despicable," or whatever. So you hear a lot of that on loop, which does get obnoxious, but the voice acting in and of itself and like the quality of the audio is pretty good, so that's neat. Yeah, plotting is just fine. Those side quests and like side mechanics about how you choose to develop either your character or your weapons or the story or whatever, I would actually call this an RPG. It's not like it's fucking Disco Elysium, but this is not like just it's a skill tree, like Assassin's Creed, Horizon Zero Dawn ass. We're pretending to be an RPG. Like, I would actually consider that it drastically changes how you do your moment-to-moment gameplay based on where you've invested skills or blood, and like what characters you have available / which ones you fucking killed or have died because of sickness. Another cool side mechanic: people get fucking sick, so you have to take care of them in all the different like boroughs of London. So you have like Whitechapel, you have like Whitechapel Alley, you have the docks, the hospital area, whatever, and they're all interdependent on each other and certain like networks flowing. So you have to. The merchants are really shitty, but if you kill all of them, people will probably get sicker, etc., etc. So depending on whether you let people stay sick for longer, they will get worse. A cold will turn into pneumonia. You have to give them a different solution for it, or you let them die, or you just don't discover them. There are a bunch of NPCs that seem to be like completely optional side missions that are either in special areas or part of like additional sequences during main story missions that you can just avoid if you're stupid. So that's pretty cool. It does change how the economy, literally and figuratively, works in the game, which I think is pretty cool. There does seem to be a lot of numbers running on the back end. It doesn't feel like it's very hyper specific. It's kind of vague. It's very vibes, but I think that's a lot more to do with how it's presented than I think what's like actually being computed on the back end. Gameplay. It's not that good. It's not bad.
Sucking rats.
You do a lot of sucking rats. So it's a very basic animation based. You hit one button to strike with your weapon. You can change your weapon. You have an offhand weapon, which is like a defense break.
A shovel.
You can indeed fight with a shovel.
Whoa.
I think. Pretty sure.
What kind of weapon do you usually use?
I use a medical hacksaw as my primary because, of course, your vibes, and then my secondary is a scalpel. So, like, your secondary or your offhand weapon is your, like, shield break or your parry, sometimes, depending on what the weapon is. You can use a wooden stake, etc., etc. You can use a gun. The guns are fine. They're just not that interesting, to be honest. They're only really useful for boss battles, in my opinion, because they break like defenses, which then means you can go in and suck their cock. I mean, their blood. I'm not going to let this joke go.
Dracula with a gun.
True, literally. Yeah, it's just fine. More than anything else, I just think it's really, 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 like, really, really, really underbaked. There's a lock-on system, so if you hit the right stick, you will choose an enemy that's in front of you. It'll give you a little, like, cursor. You'll stay locked onto them, so your attacks will then be directed at them, etc., etc. I think it makes the game worse. It's really weird. I don't think I've encountered this before, but it severely limits how easily you're able to dodge or attack. It slows everything down by like focusing you on one person and kind of making it a 1v1 fight, even though most of your fights in the game are going to be like 1v3. It's really weird. I didn't discover that until about 10 hours into the game, and I was like, oh, if I don't lock on, this game's actually a lot easier. I just think it wasn't balanced, like, more than anything else. I just feel like it wasn't given enough time to develop correctly. because it's an animation-based system, it makes sense that you would want a lock-on system, but the fact that they made it optional means that then I can discover it's actually a lot easier to then direct it myself. Whereas if you have Assassin's Creed in the earlier games, it was an auto-locking system, so you would jump across half the fucking map to hit an enemy, which makes it flow better. It doesn't make it difficult, but it does make it look better and feel better. So this game is really janky on that front because it's an animation-based system. If it was a hitbox-based system, I wouldn't be complaining about this, but it's not, and that's fine. I don't even really have a preference between the two. It's just how the technology works. You have your basic health systems. You have health versus blood. Blood is taken up by doing special vampire shit. Like, you can whip out...
Sucking rats.
Yeah, sucking rats. No. Sucking rats replenishes your blood.
Oh.
But, like, you can whip out your nasty fingernails and then scratch somebody's fucking face off. That uses blood. You can teleport, which isn't actually teleporting. You actually, you atomize yourself and then move really quickly and then connect yourself, but it's still teleporting. There's just this stupid, in-lore justification for how it works, which I thought was really funny. You can teleport. You can basically run at people really quickly. I think there's a time slowing mechanic. I don't think I've found it yet. I just think I've seen it somewhere, so don't quote me. You can coagulate people's blood in their bodies, which is pretty cool. It doesn't work very well as a gameplay mechanic, but it will, you can hold both triggers, and when you're pointed at somebody, you'll just I'm gonna make your blood thick, and then they turn into soup. And it takes a while to take effect. It's very silly. Things like that. What you'd expect for your fantasy vampire skills. It is a very over-the-top game, so it's very goofy, which I like. You can turn invisible for short periods of time. You can throw blood stakes at people. Not like a bloody stake, but you can make a wooden stake out of blood with your mind, and then you can... shit like that. Constructs. You're literally Green Lantern, but in London, but with blood. The blood system is neat. It's not terribly... I wouldn't say helpful, but it is very imbalanced in terms of defensive versus offensive and how much XP is required to upgrade things. I wouldn't say it's grindy, because you don't actually get XP from killing enemies. You have to do certain types of attacks, discover new areas, go through new dialogue options, and all that sort of stuff to get XP, which I think is a much better system. So it keeps it from being grinding, but it also still feels kind of grindy because the amounts are so high. On every skill, I think has 5 or 7-ish levels, and by the time you're at level 3, it's 1000 XP to update, and that's an hour's worth of gameplay for one skill. So I honestly think you could change none of the actual numbers. If you just chopped off all the zeros and just went down to skill point, it would probably work better, but then it would feel stupider. It would come across more like a fake RPG, So I don't really have a solution to that. It's just a weird system. You do all of your upgrading when you go to bed because you're a vampire, and you've also been hired by a hospital, by the way. Random story point. The headmaster or whatever of this hospital is oh, you like to suck cocks, huh?
Blood.
That's fine. I meant cocks. But he hires you anyway, and he's like, oh, this is weird. Interesting condition you have there. We should research this because of science and stuff. So you only work the night shift, and you have a room upstairs, and blah, blah, blah.
So he's literally you.
Kinda, yeah. He lives upstairs, and he sucks cock, yes. We're gonna run this joke into the fucking sewers. A lot of this game takes place in the sewers. A lot of this game is in the sewers. There's a lot of piss and shit. No, it's a lot of piss and shit in this game. A lot. Most main story missions are in sewers of some variety, or a graveyard. It's really weird. I guess the kind of a tag point with the gameplay being fine is also the stealth system is pretty fucked. It's not horrid. It works off of a sightline type system, but it's not demonstrated other than you have to see whether or not this NPC's face is facing towards you or not, which theoretically would make it more difficult or realism, but it also just makes it really fucking hard because the NPCs will randomly turn around and do dumb shit because they're NPCs. Excuse me. And because it's a third-person game that's kind of clunky, it's really hard to hide behind objects or whatever. Like, there isn't a crouch button, there isn't even a jump button. And your walking speed is exclusively dictated by how hard you're pushing the stick. So if you're pushing it like 1/3 of the way, you can walk. So you can walk by certain guards because you're a rich doctor-looking man. Some areas they'll just let you into. Again, they're gangs. They don't really give a shit. But if you're running, they find it suspicious, blah, blah, blah. You can walk up to people and stun them and then suck their blood and then then you like actually start combat or whatever. It's just kind of janky. It doesn't not work, but it also doesn't really work that well. I think a lot of the stealth system is trying to be subtle and under the hood, and I don't think that works because the game is so rough around the edges. I feel like if there was a lot more user interface parts, like wanting a bigger user interface, this is really fucking rare. Like having more indicators of what enemies are doing would actually be helpful because the game's kind of random and not in a good way. It's kind of weird. Technology, the presentation, the functionality ain't good, Chief. It's not horrible, but it's not very good either. And that's on top of the rough gameplay. This is the weird part. So this game has its own like internal dialectic. You as the character have, do I want to kill people because I'm hungry and I want their blood, or do I want to save people because I'm a doctor and that's good and stuff? You know, liberal, wanting to save people or whatever. The game has its own internal dialogue because it's like, do we want to be a story-based choices matter game because we're produced by the same people who made Life is Strange, or do we want to be a sick as fuck RPG? And they clash really fucking hard, like all the time, because the technology just isn't there for this company. It's made with, I think, Unreal Engine 4, and it came out in 2018. It looks like it came out in 2013. It's not good. It doesn't look ugly. It has a good like artistic style to it. It's very gothic. It's Victorian. It's got there's fog everywhere and the streets are dirty, and that all looks great. Like that does hold up well. I think the lighting engine is fantastic, but holy fucking shit, the textures are so bad. Like there is not motion capture for this, which is fine. Not every game needs to have motion capture, but when it's trying to aim to have lifelike faces and the eyes are like flat sheets that just kind of like move around, it looks pretty bad. It makes everything really fucking awkward more than anything else, especially because most of the dialogue, even if it's not incredibly well written, is usually delivered pretty well, so it just doesn't gel with the animations. It feels 5 years older than it is, easily. I don't understand why they did this, to be honest. This was their third game. So I just went back today to go check this out. So the reason I played it was because it was a Don't Nod game, and I was like, oh, that's a special interest of mine, whatever. They worked on one game that went bankrupt, and then they restructured, made Life is Strange, and then they made this one, and then they've done other Life is Strange stuff since. They sold the Life is Strange rights to a different company, and that's making them now, which I've talked about a lot of those games, and I wanted to, I guess, go in with like, wow, this is really admirable of a like narrative story-driven studio to want to make like a third-person action game with combat and all that stuff, especially because it's not unfun. It is actually pretty fun. I've been having a good fucking time despite its issues. But then I realized when I went back that their first game was actually an action game, and then they switched over to a narrative game with Life is Strange, and then they bounced back to both with this one. So I don't know if I'm more disappointed or less disappointed. I don't know how to feel about this, like as a part of their publication history. So
I didn't realize that they had sold the rights to Life is Strange.
It's either like a partnership.
Maybe. I was gonna say, when is the crossover game called Life Sucks?
I would play that. I think this game kind of is just Life Sucks. It is a lot of dealing with poor people who are sick. It is very much so Life Sucks. It's just weird. Like that doesn't make me like, oh, they should have done so much better because they've done this before. It's just, it kind of brought my level of like respect down a little bit, where I was like, oh, they have actually done this before. I haven't played said previous game, so I don't know how good it is. but it's not like this is an entirely novel experience for them either. I thought that they were just a story-driven thematic game studio. Nuh-uh. Turns out they're not. So,
what's the name of the other game?
Remember Me. It came out in 2013.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Haven't played it yet. It is on the list. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird relationship that this game has with itself, which simultaneously is cool, because then the game is like demonstrating the themes of the game by being at war with itself, and it's like, oh, you know, and that's cool. But it does also just mean that the game doesn't work sometimes, and it just is kind of janky. That was my whole pretentious spiel. I don't really have much else on that. There are no difficulty options. I am playing semi-completionist-ish. I'm about 20 hours in, and I think mostly I suck at it, so I'm not doing that well. In addition to the gameplay being kind of janky, so I'm dying a lot. And I'm only through the first act of the story out of 3.
Ouch.
I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
But the apparent, like, you know, timetocomplete.com was like 40 hours for completionist, and it's like, I don't fucking think so.
That's how it was with the game I was trying to play. It's how long to beat said 10 hours. I've probably put that in, and I'm only maybe almost done with chapter 2 out of 6.
Oof.
And yeah, that's not the game I'm talking about today.
Fair enough. I've really enjoyed my time with this game. I just don't really know what else to say about it other than, like, sometimes it's really fun, sometimes it's really broken, sometimes it looks cool, sometimes it looks bad, but I like it.
And most of the time you suck a rat.
I do suck a lot of rats. If I had to compare it, I suppose, to, let's say, last month's game. No, 2 months ago. Not last month. Dredge was great. Dredge was goated.
Yeah.
So if we go to my last, like, regular game, I guess, that would have been
Rise of Rome.
Okay, so if I had to compare it to my last the last 3 games. So Dredge was in a league of its own, whatever. That hit a particular niche that I like. It wasn't that game was particularly incredible. It just, I really liked it. So that's kind of doesn't count. That was last month's. There's more to this game than Rise Son of Rome, like a lot more in terms of narrative and decision making. It looks a bit worse than Rise did. Rise was very clearly a launch title for the Xbox One, but it also was kind of impressive on its technology front. But because it was going for, like, hyper realism, that doesn't age that well when you compare it to, like, what we can do now. Whereas Vampyr has some style to it. It's not entirely lifelike, so it can get away with a lot more. There's a lot more overt lighting choices and weird character designs and shit like that. So I would say it's better morally. Like, I respect it more. I think I enjoy it more, but, like, in terms of functionality, Rise was probably better. And in terms of Twin Mirror wasn't very good. So, and that's made by the same studio. Twin Mirror was like D tier. This is probably B. I'm gonna say, in terms of predicting my tier list for the end of the year, I'm thinking this is B, maybe C, but I'm enjoying it, so it might be a B. We're in that neck of the woods. Like, this is we're talking. It's a real good. It's the same thing I said with Rise Son of Rome. It's a real good 7 out of 10 game. I would recommend it if it sounds interesting to you, but it is frustrating. But on the bright side, you can find it cheap as fuck. I think I got this for like $5 at a used game store.
Did you ever play Dishonored?
Yes.
Is it sort of the same morality system as that?
No.
Where you kill more people and it makes the game worse for you?
I would say no, but that's because I think Dishonored system sucks.
Yeah, it does.
I like the gameplay of Dishonored, but its morality system is busted as shit.
Yep.
This doesn't really have a morality system explicitly. It does actually kind of do ethics, where it's like certain things can become harder, but it also has a pretty good head about it, where you kill the shitty landlord and then this district's prostitutes are actually a lot healthier because they're not getting squeezed for rent money. But if you kill, like, the kind of racist merchant but who does actually provide some vital services for the area, then, like, whatever, you know, like, it does.
I see.
It actually engages with the material a little bit more than, like, good, bad.
Don't kill people.
Don't kill. Like, the game is telling you shouldn't kill people anyways, but it is not always mad at you when you do either. You know, there are some choices, like, you know, boss fights, you still have to kill them. Like, enemy gang members, you still have to kill them. But in terms of, like, civilians, it's usually like, don't do that. But a lot of these people turn out to be, like, either really fucking racist or, like, murderers.
When you popped the disc in for the first time, did you whisper to yourself, it's Morbin time?
No.
You should have.
I was trying to think of a good Morbius joke, to be honest, but I couldn't come up with one. But it is interesting that Morbius is probably going to end up making more money than Joker 2, despite the fact that Joker made like $1 bajillion. So that's interesting. You know, real-time economics going on right now. Yeah,
Morbin time.
I think I bought this for like $5 to $10.
Morbius Simulator.
There are definitely better vampire games. I just don't know of any off the top of my head. There are more vampire-based games than I thought there were, which is cool. So this might be a new focus of mine for a while. I'm going to keep playing this game. I don't know if I'm going to try to 100% it. I don't know how hard that's going to be. It's going to require more than one playthrough, so I don't know. But I'm going to go home tonight and play it more. Because I'm not in a rush to get to my next game. And I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.